Welcome, Housewives of True Crime. Oh my goodness. Hello, Monday. This weekend was not so. My daughter came home from the Florida and she had her second homecoming with her friends from her old school. So that was super nice that she got to do that. And it was so, you guys, it was so nice having her home. I felt this sense of relief and kind of normalcy for a minute, and just having her friends over was so nice, and seeing them and all of that was just so lovely. I will let you know next week how the rest of the weekend went because it's only Saturday, but I had the girls over on Friday and then her friends spent the night, and now they're doing homecoming pictures, all that today. That's what I'm in the middle of. And my son had baseball. I mean, it's all the things. Did you guys listen to my Patreon? If you haven't, we're having a little scandal in the neighborhood. And so I have some moral dilemma. I don't want to necessarily talk about it on here yet. I will probably do the case eventually, but I would love your opinion. So if you are on Patreon or on Clink Clink Club, go there and let me know what you all think about that. If you also are not on my Facebook group, please join it. It's Housewives of True Crime group, or you can follow me at Tab the Housewife on Instagram and Facebook. I think Facebook, I just have the Housewives of True Crime group. But on Instagram, I am Tab the Housewife. And then also I drove down to Austin on Friday, which was yesterday in actuality. And because Smash Kitchen had an event at Walmart with Glenn Powell, who is my husband's partner. And he is just so amazing. And my son wanted to come because there was a guy named Nick DiGiovanni. And your kids probably know who he is because he's a like YouTube and TikTok guy that makes food, which, you know, if you're going to have your kids watch any kind of YouTube or TikTok, this is the guy to do it. He makes really cool things. He was on MasterChef and just a cool dude. And we got to meet him in person. My son was so ecstatic. Him and his buddy took half day at school, and I drove down to Austin. It took me 6 hours from Dallas because it's ACL weekend, which I wasn't familiar, but ACL is it's like a music festival. Austin City Limits, I think, is what it's called. And so there was tons and tons and tons of traffic, but I finally made it, and my son got to meet Glenn and got to meet Nick, and so kumbaya in my world. And I think that's like all that really has been going on here in the world of me. And if you guys want to interact with me, I love to hear what you guys are up to on the weekends. Tell me something fun that you do. I would love to hear it. That's why I said join my Instagram. I reply to all my DMs, I think. Most of them. Sometimes they get hidden in some weird file that's like I hardly ever see, but I try to reply to all of you guys. So thank you so much for reaching out. All right, today's case, you guys, I'm just going to get into it because it is what it is. Also, on Wednesday, you're going to hear from my friend Joanne, who has a missing daughter. So don't miss Wake Up Wednesday 2 times in the month. So that's awesome. Okay, so let's get started on today's episode. All right, today I am taking you to a very cold but beautiful state that I've actually been to. It's called Alaska. It's really an amazing place to visit. If you guys haven't gone there and you have some extra cash to go on a cruise. Speaking of cruise, you guys, tell me if you're going on Crime Wave at Sea. I will be there. It's only in a month away, so that will be fun. Okay, but I did take a cruise to Alaska, and it was really one of my highlights of my travels. And it's not just for old people. I thought it kind of was because my grandma asked us to go on an Alaskan cruise one time, and I was like, is that for old people? But it truly is not. There are so many fun things to do in Alaska. We went dog sledding, we went on a helicopter, we went rafting. We did a bunch of fun things, and it's absolutely gorgeous. You have to go in the summertime because I can imagine the winters are brutal and dark, kind of like Iceland. And this story in particular takes place in Anchorage, Alaska, which is the largest city in Alaska. It has about 280,000 people living there, which is about half of the state's population. So you can imagine other parts of the state, people are few and far between. Now we're talking about Bethany Correira. She actually moved to Anchorage at the age of 21. She was originally from, and I'm probably getting this name wrong, but it's Talkeetna. I think that's how you say it. And that is a very small town with about 800 people. And a tad fact you probably already know is that Alaska is where you can see northern lights, a lot of darkness in the winter, and a lot of light in the summer. But much like Austin, it is cold and it's dark and it's beautiful, but it can be tough to live in. And so you kind of truly have to be a special kind of person to make it through those brutal winters, in my opinion. But the summers are full of adventure, mountaineering, and a lot of light. So you can do fun things like into 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night, because it's not dark, which is really fun in the summer if you're into adventure, which Bethany was. Bethany and her family, they had a large family. They loved living there. They were super close, the kind of people that just, they're the type of people that just, all the kids knew how to do everything, and Bethany knew how to do everything. Her family just really, I want to say, we're super loving, but let the kids learn how to change a tire or chop some wood. And that is my kind of disco biscuit. So in my opinion, Bethany was just that. She was born in 1981 and she was homeschooled along with her siblings. Bethany was also a super athlete playing hockey. Hello. See, disco biscuit. And she was not afraid of getting in there with the boys. By her early 20s, Bethany had already seen more of the world than many Alaskans ever do. She spent a year sailing around the South Pacific as a crew member and a babysitter for a family. Like, amazing. And this is actually really where she fell in love with the ocean. She also traveled to South Asia for a missionary work, volunteering in Nepal and Thailand to help communities in need. These experiences really fueled her passion for helping others. When she returned from her volunteer work, Bethany worked as a regional airline in Nome, Alaska. She worked in the office, and there she started dating a young pilot that was stationed there. But she still had bigger dreams than to live in Nome, Alaska and work in the office. She actually wanted to become a medical professional. So in 2003, when Bethany was just 21, she decided to take flight to Anchorage, Alaska, and no one was really surprised. She was very independent and ready for the bigger city. She was accepted into the University of Alaska, Anchorage, and planned to study pre-med. With her characteristic drive, she quit her job in Nome and prepared for a fresh start in Anchorage. To her, the move to the city meant, not only college classes, but also a chance to spread her wings, get her first taste of real independent adult life, grow up. She was from this small little tight-knit community. And Bethany's family and friends, they were like, go for it, girl. We know you can do it. We know you're super independent. You've already been all over this globe doing things. And so no one was surprised for her to just fearlessly chase her goals. So she arrived in Anchorage, Alaska, full of hope and promise and ready to really build this bright, big future. She found an apartment in Bootleggers Cove. It's an area of downtown Anchorage. It's really cute. It's on the coast. And, Bethany probably thought it was super safe. And I think probably anybody thinking of a city, like a big city that only has 280,000 people, you also probably think it is pretty safe. However, Anchorage, Alaska is a little big city. It has double the national average of crime rate, which is a little red flag for me. And it kind of makes me think that we need to be a little more diligent than we probably think. And probably, the story is not, you'll see, but anyways, let's just know that the crime rate in Anchorage is higher than normal, double actually. And so if you go there, just be aware of that. Bethany's life was, she really had these strong relationships, both with family and new friendships. Family was everything to her. She was the second oldest in 4 children. And her mom, Linda, was just an amazing mom. I'm telling you, she let her kids all become the best versions of themselves. And she really let them spread their wings how they wanted to, which I applaud her. She actually came with Bethany to Anchorage to help her find her apartment and get her settled into the city life. The two spoke on the phone almost every day, or probably they spoke every single day. And they also were going to go furniture shopping because Bethany just moved in. She needed some stuff. So her mom was going to come into town and go shopping with her. Also, Bethany did have a boyfriend, a serious relationship actually, with a guy named Joe Tamblin. Now, Joe was a young pilot that she met while working in Nome. And his job being a pilot, it's pretty good because you can fly anywhere and you can live somewhere and fly somewhere and not have to pay for it. So that's awesome perk of being a pilot. But he was based in Nome. So it was now, because she's in Anchorage, a long distance relationship, but they loved each other. And so they were like, you know what, we're just going to make this long distance relationship work. Joe fully encouraged Bethany to go to college. He loved that she had this motivation and these goals. And so he even helped her move into her apartment in Anchorage. Every day apart, they stayed in touch. They called each other. And on May 3rd, 2003, it was like every other day, Joe spoke with Bethany on the phone. She was happy to hear from him, but she was annoyed that she got this early morning call from the apartment manager that called her at 8 and said, hey, let's go learn the ropes of showing rental units. Well, she had taken up this part-time job at the apartment complex that she lived in to get like a discount on her rent, I guess. And this guy was like, hey, come and I'll show you how to like clean up the apartments and you can do a little bit of work for me and, I'll give you a discount. Sounds awesome. He took a liking to her. She was into it. She's, kind of down for anything. So this apartment manager, his name was Mike Lawson, and he was 45 years old. He was a contractor, and he was also the apartment manager who offered this job to Bethany. He seemed to be a nice guy, and he really seemed to take a liking to Bethany. Mike Lawson, or Michael Lawson, he was a 45-year-old contractor who also was the apartment manager. And he offered Bethany this job to take a break on the rent. And he seemed like he was a nice guy. He really took a liking to Bethany. What's not to like? She's young, beautiful, and very, very helpful girl. So, everybody seemed friendly. He's like, hey, come take this job. So she did. After the call, though, on this May 3rd with her boyfriend, Joe, Bethany Correira just vanished. Bethany's brother actually was coming in that very day to town, and Bethany was going to go pick him up from the airport, but she never showed up. So this was concerning to her brother. So he calls their mom and he's like, dude, Bethany's not picking up her phone and she didn't come get me at the airport. But their mom was just like, listen, Bethany's got a lot going on. She's got school now. She's living alone. She's got this part-time job. Like, give her a break. I'm sure it's fine. And that very next day, Linda was actually going with Bethany to go furniture shopping. So Linda shows up at Bethany's apartment and her door is unlocked. And when Linda goes inside Bethany's apartment, her cell phone, her keys, her purse, and her bike, everything that she would have taken with her had she gone somewhere, was still inside her apartment. Now, this was really strange, especially because she's 21 years old. And I mean, me being 45 years old, don't even leave the house without my phone. But for sure, 21 years old, you don't leave your house without your phone. At that time, I kind of start to think, so Bethany's she's not actually 21 at this time. Because she was born in 1981. So she is maybe 22. But so I was 22 at this, we're like the same age. So let's just think we had those like razor phones, I think at that time, but I still had it all the time with me. I hardly ever left that phone. It was like the flip phone, put in your pocket, in the back, in your jeans. So I'm sure she had a flip phone. It was probably pink like mine. And she would not leave it. And her mom knew that. So it was as if like Bethany stepped outside of her apartment for a moment and then she did not return. Linda's maternal instinct told her something was terribly wrong, and she contacted the Anchorage police right away. She reported Bethany missing, refusing to be told to wait and see. They always try to do that. Do not let them wait and see. By the end of that weekend, Bethany, a college student, was officially a missing person, and a mystery was underway. When investigators started to look into what could have happened to Bethany or where she could be, they knew there was no indication of forced entry, right? Her mom just walked in. There doesn't seem to be any struggle in her apartment whatsoever. Everything was like neat and tidy. Her stuff was just laid there. But they did learn of this mystery fire that occurred in their next door building. It was an empty kind of duplex around the same time that Bethany disappeared. And although this fire was initially thought to be started by a faulty wire that ignited, Detective Clink Clink thought, this coincidence is too striking to ignore. And I agree. Officer Glenn, Detective Glenn, you're onto something. The burnt out duplex next door immediately became a focal point for the investigator. As Clinkhart suspected, we just talked about burning stuff, right? Like in the yogurt shop murders, like you hide clues with burning things. And so he thought, something's off here. She goes missing. This duplex catches on fire. Weird. The Correira family, along with friends and volunteers, organized extensive search parties across the city and surrounding wilderness. Literally, armies of volunteers scoured the parks, the green belts, the trails, any trace of this 5'5" brunette college student. Where the heck is she? Missing persons flyers with Bethany's smiling face were posted at grocery stores, coffee shops, utility poles everywhere. They covered Anchorage, Alaska. People knew now, where is Bethany? This girl is missing, and she is, she's missing from here. That is scary. That is super, super scary. Lots of Bethany's neighbors even flew down to Anchorage, Alaska, and just camped out at Bootlegger's Cove to help look for Bethany. Her disappearance led to the news. Vigils, prayer circles were held in her city or in Anchorage, and then also her city that she was from, Talkeetna. Oh, I don't know, you guys. Talk. That sounds like talk, and then Eetna. Talkeetna. Weird word name. Okay. Police with state troopers and the FBI held a press conference pleading for tips, and the community's response was immense. Over 100 volunteers joined the official search alongside the professional rescuers, K9 units, and despite this tireless effort, I'm telling you, it is torturously tiresome to look for bodies. It's something that no one wants to do. So it's so amazing that people will do it. But unfortunately, all this, from May until the end of the summer, they're searching for Bethany, and there was nothing. They could not find her. No physical evidence or sightings of Bethany turned up. And it was just like she vanished into thin air. Joe, being the boyfriend, was, what do you guys think? Of course he's looked at right away. But he had a rock solid alibi. He was a pilot and he was flying commercially that day, so he was nowhere in sight. But, he did have a very big clue. Remember, Bethany was supposed to go see Mike Lawson, the, landlord guy who she was supposedly working for. Now, investigators wanted to talk to him right away. And he was unavailable at first, which is no surprise and a very big red flag in my opinion. And so the investigators were like, okay, well, we'll just pay you a visit unexpectedly, Mikey boy. And they went to his house. Now, him and his brother lived together, and both of them were home at the time the investigators stopped by. They said they had no idea where Bethany was. They had not seen Bethany at all that day because they too were at home all day long watching NASCAR, and then they went to the bars after that. Mike said him and Bob, his brother, were, just hanging out. And he said, never did I see her that day. However, she did call me around 8 o'clock in the morning with some problem with some keys. Now, you remember, that's not what she told her boyfriend. She told her boyfriend that Mike actually called her because he wanted her to meet him at an apartment so he could show her how to, clean and show it, which, by the way, she was never to show these apartments. She was only cleaning them and getting them ready for the new tenants. So it was a little strange that now he was like, oh, she needs to be able to show the apartment. And I think the owner of that company also was like, that she was not hired for that. So, who's lying? The boyfriend's lying or Mike's lying? One of them is lying. The Lawson brothers also, the demeanor immediately put detectives on edge. Mike was overly helpful and real confident. Too slick is what one investigator described him, while Bob, his brother, was really quiet and visibly nervous. He often glanced at his brother as if he was getting clues on how to answer these questions he was being asked. So the police left that first interview with a gut feeling that these Lawson brothers had something they were hiding. So over the next couple weeks, detectives dug deeper into Mike Lawson's past, and what they found is real suspicious. Mike Lawson was a contractor overseeing renovation projects, including the duplex that had burned. And A check on his criminal background revealed that Mike had a prior conviction of aggravated sexual assault in Illinois in the 80s, and he actually served time in prison for that. He also moved to Alaska right after he got out of prison and never registered as a sex offender, which he was legally obligated to do so, but he failed to do that. A huge clue also came in when a coworker of Mike's, his name is Franco Bessines. I could also be just totally chopping that name, so sorry. Franco, I'm just going to call you Franco. So Franco contacted the police and reported that just after Bethany disappeared, Mike had been acting really strange and speaking pretty harshly about Bethany. According to Franco, and actually was corroborated by a couple others that overheard it, Mike had a very volatile temper, especially towards women. His fourth wife actually had left him recently, and he often ranted about women and how they were bitches and how he hated them. Yeah, real nice guy. Franco also told them that Mike bragged about an encounter that he once had at a bar where he allegedly beat up a woman in anger because of something his wife did or something like that. It's like the story is so crazy. He just basically beat a woman because he was angry at somebody else. I mean, this guy is a real effing douche canoe. So Franco goes to the police and he tells them this, which, hallelujah, Franco. Like, we need more people like you, because I feel like if you've got some construction guys at the workplace and some douchebag is just ranting and raving about his, girl he beat up at because he was like mad at his ex-wife, or his ex-wife left him and he just thinks all women are bitches and he's just going on a rampage. I don't know if how many people would be like, yeah, I'm going to call the cops on that one. But you should, because this guy clearly has like a screw loose and he needs to be locked up. Justice has not been served for this Mike Lawson. So we need more people like Franco. Thank you, Franco. See something, say something, even if it's nothing. Even if, the police had to go check out, like, just say they checked him out and it's like, oh no, he's just, running his mouth and he's not telling the truth. But thankfully this time, Franco was onto something. So the police were able to get a subpoena for the phone records of both Mike and Bob. And, they wanted to see, were you really at home watching NASCAR all day? Well, no. The phone records did not line up. Mike Lawson had claimed that he had stayed home all day on May 3rd, but his mobile phone activity told a very different story. Logs showed that morning of Bethany's disappearance, Mike's cell phone placed a flurry of calls on his own home phone and his brother's cell phone. Then these calls pinged at cell towers along M Street in downtown Anchorage, right near Bethany's apartment, not from Lawson's home across town where he said he was. The data actually indicated that around 10 or 11, Mike's phone then traveled north out of the city along Parks Highway before going off the grid, which means like there's no signal. I mean, we're in Alaska, people, so that's not unheard of, especially in 2003. So his phone goes off the grid for about 3 hours. Later that afternoon, the phone reconnects to the network coming back into Anchorage, which is consistent with a round trip drive north. What are you doing? You're not watching NASCAR, bud. The pattern fit perfectly with the theory that Mike and Bob had driven north to, I don't know, maybe get rid of Bethany's body. On top of that, a neighbor eyewitness came forward. Her name was Gail Siwat, and she said she was moving into the apartment building on May 3rd, and she recalled seeing Mike Lawson's white Mercedes SUV parked outside that empty duplex, the one with the fire. And there was no reason that he should have been at that empty duplex. So piece by piece, the circumstantial evidence against Mike Lawson was stacking up. But by late 2003, police and prosecutors, although convinced that Mike Lawson had something to do with Bethany's disappearance, they still faced a major hurdle: lack of body and lack of direct physical evidence. This case was largely built on inference, like phone records, lies, and arson, but no one had found Bethany yet. And that is a main piece that you need to convict somebody. So without a body, there was just no proof of homicide. And without forensic evidence like blood or DNA, it was hard to directly tie Mike to this crime. In early 2004, the investigation took a dramatic turn. Anchorage police actually discovered that Mike and his brother Bob had committed bank fraud. They applied for a business loan and they lied. They failed to disclose that Mike had a prior felony record. Now, this gave authorities leverage to arrest Mike and Bob on February 2004. Federal agents arrested both of them because now, they are committing bank fraud, and they're like, let's see if we can get these guys to talk. Now, Bob was the weaker seeming brother, even when they first interviewed him. And he for sure did not want to go to prison, you guys. He was like, they were probably telling him he could get 20 years for bank fraud unless, you want to tell us something about another crime that you might be involved in. You may or may not know something about this crime. Maybe we can make a deal, Bob. And Bob finally cracked. In an interview with Detective Clink and a plea deal on the table, Bob tearfully confessed to a broad outline of what happened on May 3rd, 2003. He admitted that Mike had called him in a frenzy that day, saying that he had just shot somebody. So Bob rushed to the M Street duplex and found Bethany dead on the floor, with Mike distraught over what he had done. Now, Bob claims that Mike was high on cocaine at the time and insisted the shooting was accidental. Now, I don't believe that, but this is what, Mike's telling his brother. And so together, these brothers decided to hide evidence, and they drove Bethany north and dumped her in a remote area near They dumped her in a remote area near mile 129 of Parks Highway. Bob even pinpointed the spot, a gravel pit that they knew of. Then they returned and set the duplex on fire to, get rid of evidence, like I said. After giving this statement, Bob agreed to lead authorities to Bethany's body as part of this cooperation deal. And so, after nearly a year of not knowing where Bethany was, investigators had a solid lead on recovering her remains. However, like I told you, it's Alaska and it's cold and it's snowing. And so the site that Bob identified was super, super deep in snow and ice. And so detectives had to wait until the spring of 2004 to go look for Bethany. And actually, they looked for her, but there's no way to find her under the snow. So on May 3rd, 2004, exactly 1 year to the day since Bethany went missing, the team of police went out with FBI agents to this remote gravel pit off of Parks Highway, and they made a grim discovery. They found human remains, largely just like skeletons, scattered remains, because you got to think it's a super harsh winter. There's animals, and so dental records were provided by Bethany's family, and it was soon confirmed that the remains were in fact Bethany's. The location was really very, very close to her original town. So it's kind of like she was just sitting out there in between Anchorage and her hometown. So medical examiners could not determine the exact cause of death. The remains showed evidence of a gunshot wound, but it wasn't conclusive. Regardless, the case was now officially a homicide. Bethany's loved ones finally had answers to this dreaded disappearance, and they knew at this point that she had been murdered, but at least they could bring her home and lay her to rest, which I think so many people, we just spoke with Julie Gonzalez's mom, like, if you don't have the piece of the missing piece of the puzzle, then, and that's a big missing piece, it's always missing from your life, missing from your heart, missing like in your mind. So the fact that Bethany was recovered is a real blessing. So with Bethany's body recovered and Bob's testimony, the authorities moved pretty quick to charge Michael Lawson with the murder. Mike was indicted on 7 felony accounts, including first-degree murder, second-degree felony murder, kidnapping, arson, tampering with evidence, and weapons misconduct. By 2004, Mike Lawson, who was still jailed on this fraud matter, was now to be behind bars awaiting trial for Bethany's murder. But the state's fight was far from over, because the lead witness, and probably the only one other than Mike who knew exactly what had happened, or maybe he actually didn't know exactly what happened, because, you know, he clearly said that his brother didn't sexually assault Bethany, but she was naked. So there's that. But anyhow, he probably could put 2 and 2 together. But Bob, you know, was going to testify against Mike. And I think what happened is Bob couldn't take the pressure and the severity of the crime that he actually committed also, and his part in snitching on his brother and having to testify against him. So Bob Lawson ended his own life before going on the stand to testify against his brother. Now, although they have his taped confession, you know, they taped his confession. They have it on recording. But because Bob is not alive and cannot be cross-examined, his testimony is inadmissible in court now, which is so infuriating. Can you even imagine? You're like, now what? So while Mike was actually in custody, here is our saving grace, you guys. Investigators had Bob put a wire on and make a phone call to Mike. Thank goodness, because during this call, Mike made several incriminating statements. Basically, he admitted to killing Bethany, and he did try to frame it as an accident, but he admitted that he, you know, did, and he hadn't meant to do it. So this phone call was admitted because the words came from Mike's mouth, not Bob's mouth. So armed with just this recording, but with an admission really, right? Mike's admitting it, and the physical evidence from Bethany's remains and all this circumstantial proof gathered, Alaska prosecutors felt that they did have a pretty strong case to put front of a jury. And without Bob's testimony. They had all this other stuff. So in August 2007, more than 4 years after Bethany disappeared, Michael Lawson's murder trial began in Anchorage, Alaska. The courtroom was actually packed with Bethany's family and friends and volunteers who had searched for her. All of them were just hoping for justice. Prosecution laid out their story. I mean, to me, it's like, listen, this guy has shifting alibis. We have cell phone records. We have this burned duplex. We have your confession on tape. So Mike Lawson's defense obviously tried to cast some doubt, suggesting that without an eyewitness or a clear forensics, that the state hadn't proved murder beyond a reasonable doubt. But Mike's own words and actions ultimately condemned him. And after deliberation, the jury returned a guilty verdict, finding Mike Lawson guilty of second-degree murder in Bethany Correira's death. So I would have liked first-degree murder because she was naked, meaning he probably sexually assaulted her. I don't think it was second degree. I think it was first degree, but I think because we didn't get to have Bob's confession in there, that's why it was down to second degree. So, all the investigators' tireless efforts finally paid off. The man who took Bethany's life was being held accountable in the court of law. Michael Lawson ultimately faced the consequences of his heinous acts, and in early 2008, he was sentenced to 99 years in prison at 46 years old. This is the maximum sentence for second-degree murder, and the judge emphasized that Lawson needed to be isolated from society for the rest of his life. Lawson's other convictions, arson, tampering, weapons, misconduct, were merged for the sentencing purposes, effectively ensuring that he would never walk free. As of today, Michael Lawson remains incarcerated at Spring Creek Correctional Center in Seward, Alaska. It's a maximum security prison. Now in his mid-60s, he will be eligible for release on in the year 2073. So he will not probably be getting out of the clink unless he's in a casket. Now, what we know is that morning, Bethany had planned to meet this apartment manager, Mike Lawson, and she thought she was going to train for her part-time job. Sometime after 8 a.m., she headed next door to this empty duplex building that Mike managed and said, come on over here. It was there inside one of the quiet, empty units on M Street that Bethany met Mike, who violently ended her life. Evidence later revealed that Mike Lawson attacked Bethany at the duplex and ultimately shot her to death on the premises. His exact motives still remain unclear, but Bethany's fate was undoubtedly horrific. When Lawson's younger brother, Robert, who goes by Bob Lawson, arrived to help, he found Bethany's lifeless body on the floor, nude and brutally slain. This detail was revealed in Bob's confession. And I will say it strongly suggests also that she was probably sexually assaulted before she was killed, although we don't know because when we found her body, we cannot tell. So Bob says that Mike was panicking and he immediately enlisted his brother to cover this up. The Lawson brothers then loaded Bethany's body into Mike's white Mercedes SUV, driving north into Alaska wilderness. Approximately 45 miles outside the city, Bob started getting antsy, and he just was like, let's just get rid of her now. And so they found this gravel pit to stop and let her out. Then the brothers tried to hide the crime, and they returned to the city that day. Mike and Bob set this fire, right, at the duplex building where the murder had occurred. Now, flames soon engulfed this empty structure, but there's a weird fact here. I think Bob set the fire, and then it didn't actually like light. And so Mike returned and made sure to set the fire again, and then actually destroyed the apartment complex and all whatever DNA evidence or whatever they had in there. And that's when the fire department came and put the fire out. But this case is terribly sad. I'm super happy that there's two things that happened here that were really great. Bob, the brother, confessed, which is awesome. He had a conscience, which, although he's deceased now, at least he came out and, gave it up. And then also just Franco, amazing. Like, I don't know where you are, Franco, but you really had a hand in finding out like what actually happened here. Bethany's case was also felt in law enforcement and broader in the Alaskan community. The detective, Clink Clink, who had pursued Bethany's disappearance, later credited Bethany with rekindling his sense of purpose as a police officer. And after the case, Clink actually wrote a book titled Finding Bethany, a memoir detailing the investigation from start to finish, which is amazing. I love that he did that. In it, he highlighted not only the police work, but also the extraordinary community support that cracked this case. He tells of Bethany's friends from her town who temporarily relocated to Anchorage to aid in the efforts of the search, and a 12-year-old boy who volunteered daily at the police command after school. That is just seriously so amazing. The case also pushed the Anchorage Police Department to adopt new investigative techniques. It was one of the first times Alaska Police Department used cellular triangulation to pinpoint the suspect's movements, which is great. It's, now like they do it all the time, but it's awesome. So anyways, I am, so sad about this case because Bethany seemed to be just an amazing disco biscuit, but I think we can see that there was some learning lessons here. There's a learning lesson also for the police department and just for us as human beings to stay safe, be diligent. If something doesn't feel right, don't do it. See something, say something. And I think that's all I've got for you guys today. Check it out on Wednesday. I have a new episode coming and you'll hear from Anna and Joanna, and it's so great to talk to them. And Thursday, Patreon, don't miss it. And I think that's it. If you guys, I have some merch available. You guys can go on to Housewives of True Crime and the merch section, and I have some new sweatshirts, new swag for you guys to look at. I have 2 designs and a hat. Okay, so also 5 crimes. If you guys need some hair growth or some super, super smooth skin, head to 5crimes.com, and that is FIVE crimes.com. And I think until next week, clink, clink, guys.